First big idea, I want to bring to your mind the D-Day landing in June of 1944. Now, you will recall just probably a month or so ago, we celebrated this across the country. People talking about D-Day. There was a lot of discussion about it, and you know, so we all have this appreciation, this knowledge that D-Day occurred. Maybe we don't know what it was, that what all was involved in it. And I want to give you a little bit of a history lesson on this. I think it's very, very important. So let's take a peek at this, huh? So first off, the good question is, why even have a D-Day? You know, what was that all about? This big invasion thing. Well, here's the deal. World War II was not going well. Matter of fact, we were losing. The Allied forces were losing. So we needed a new strategy, because what we were doing it wasn't working. We needed, in other words, a big idea. And big idea it's our theme for today. But we needed a big idea to change the playing field, because we needed to win. There was World War II was a battle for ideas and ideologies, and it was freedom versus not being free. So there was an awful lot at stake here. So let's take a look at how the Allied forces, the good guys, came up with a new idea. So General Eisenhower and his staff of other generals, they met and they came up with a plan. They needed a plan, right? You need a big idea. So they did come up with one. They did. So what did they come up with? Now here is their plan. Okay? Remember now, there are desperate times. We were losing, so they had to come up with a plan. And we trusted these guys to come up with a plan. So what's the plan? Here it is. So they decided that what we needed to do was to have an amphibious landing. And this amphibious landing should be of a huge Allied force on a tiny little beach. And oh yeah, by the way, those beaches were protected by 58 German divisions. I think some of the troops might have been saying something like, thanks, boss. So that's the plan. Very ambitious plan. As I mentioned early on, its chances for success were very slim. And you know what, in this case, even if everything worked, chances were very slim. So as the day came for the invasion, General Eisenhower addressed his troops, and he let them know how important this thing was. And basically his letter to his troops, it was just from the heart, and he said that you know, the hopes and prayers of freedom-loving people all around the world go marching with you. And he told them how thoroughly convinced he was that they would persevere, and that even though the enemy was tough and battle-hardened, that our guys and gals were better than that, and they would win, and that we had to win, and that we would accept nothing less than full victory. So this is what General Eisenhower sent out to his troops. At the same time he wrote that, very few people realize this. He drafted a statement, and it's kind of hard to read here. But what he said in his statement was, he drafted this realizing that there was a good chance that the mission was going to fail. And so he had this statement prepared. And Actually, you see in the bottom there, it says July 5th. It was actually written June 5th. He was kind of distracted, and he wrote down the wrong month there. But he drafted this on June 5th, 1944, and he let the world know that his troops did everything they possibly could, everything they were asked for, but that the invasion failed, and that the fault for the failure of the mission was his alone. And you know, it's great, isn't it, to have a leader who takes responsibility. Win, lose, or draw, take responsibility for your actions. I really admire that. A day or two before the invasion, Ike was out there with his troops. These guys are getting ready now to begin this invasion, probably a day or two after this picture was taken. But he was out there with them, encouraging them, letting them know that he believed in him. So it was a leader gets with his troops. And they did this just before, as I mentioned, a day or two before those guys climbed into these landing crafts. And you can see them there, huddled in the bottom of this craft. You can see out in the distance the Normandy coast. And this started about 6:30 in the morning on June 6th. But imagine being one of these guys in that landing craft, you know, facing what is ahead. So Ike and the rest of the generals had had quite an undertaking. So to give you an appreciation for the magnitude of this enterprise, look at, there's these 11 countries that were involved in this. You think you have language issues on the job site? look at what Ike and the rest of the generals had to do with. So when you anticipate a big undertaking like this, you have to think big, and bringing in 11 countries, that's thinking big, and you have to visualize this stuff happening, and you have to visualize yourself winning. And beyond the 11 countries, check this out. The Allied forces landed 156,000 troops on the beaches there at Normandy. 156,000. Of that, the U.S. had 73,000. The United Kingdom, 61,700 something. And then Canada had 21,400. That's Canada. It's not California. California, I assure you, did not send 21,000 troops to invade Normandy. That's Canada. But this is the bulk of the component of what made up that landing there at Normandy. The U.S. put troops on 2 different beaches. You can see there, 23,000 on Utah, 34 on Omaha Beach, and then 15,500 airborne. We'll come back to the airborne in just a moment. The Brits and the Canadians, you can see the numbers there, 83,000 landed. They landed their guys on 3 different beaches, plus the British had some airborne troops as well. This is what that whole landing zone thing looked like. Those are the 5 beaches. You can see on either side there's the drop zones for the airborne. And the blue is the water, and so you're oriented there. But this is how it was drawn up. This is how it went. Here's something that's I think really interesting. So about 6-7 hours before the invasion, there was the U.S., Brits, and Canada launched 24,000 paratroopers and gliders, and the idea was to get them into the areas nearby where the Allied troops were going to come in ashore. So So what happens is at about midnight, that's when these 24,000 paratroopers and glider troops launched. So it was dark, and it wasn't easy, and it took a lot of courage, and they did that. This is what an airborne drop looks like. The one for the D-Day landing didn't look quite like this because you wouldn't have been able to see it because it was dark out. All right, but you got planes everywhere, parachutes more than everywhere, and again, it was nighttime, but it kind of did look like that. To make all this stuff happen, had 11,500 aircraft, and you can see the number of sorties that were flown. There were some casualties, but that was the Air Force. That was the Air Force operation. The Airborne itself had 2,395 aircraft, probably about 10 men per plane. There was also, this I found fascinating, there was 867 combat gliders. These, we use the term loosely, the troops that flew in these gliders, these were tow planes, the gliders were towed behind planes. You'll see a picture in a minute. The troops referred to them as flying coffins, tow targets, that sort of thing. They were engineless, they were unarmed, and none of the guys in the gliders had parachutes, not even the pilots. All right, and the gliders were designed for one landing only. And you can see there's a tow plane, and then there's a glider behind it. Look at the running gear on that glider. It's not really, that's going to be landing in the brush, and you can see that it's probably not good for more than one landing. The Navy, heavily involved, almost 7,000 vessels there. A number of them combat ships, and then there are these smaller, the landing ships. So there were thousands of these amphibious landing ships that were hitting the beaches, and then there's some other support craft. But this is the size of the Navy. The amount of people assigned to the Navy was, look at this, almost 200,000 people assigned to the Navy portion of this. Almost 53,000 that were U.S. and 112,000 Brits, and then about 5,000 of the others to make the naval operation work. Can you say wow? That's a wow. Oh my. D-Day was so big. You know, the old question is, well, how big was it? So D-Day was so big that D-Day took 6 days. That's right. So totals 326,000 plus troops involved in this thing, counting the troops on the ground and then the Navy and in the air. Some 54,000 vehicles, and look at all these. Look at all the supplies that were landed on the beaches. You know, of those 326,000, most of them were kids. There were some 16-year-old kids who lied to get in and serve, and probably they went up to age 22 or so. The vast majority of those, and you know, and older than that as well. But the vast majority were young. So get that picture in your mind. You know, this many people and youngsters that pulled this off. You guys, this is how the war, World War II, was won. And this is how Europe was saved. It's that big of a deal. So as you contemplate this, you know, you think about things like, you look at the guys getting out of this landing craft, and you can see the beach way up ahead there. Could you do this? And I think even more than that, the question for you is, these days, would you do this? I don't think I could these days. I appreciate what they did. But you know what? As big a deal as D-Day was, there's another important part of it. So that whole effort that I just talked about here for D-Day, it was linked to another big idea. And that was winning at a place called Point du Hoc. So in order for D-Day to succeed, we had to win at this place called Point du Hoc. And I just got to tell you about Point du Hoc. You won't believe this. You absolutely won't believe this. But you need to see it. Because seeing, in this case, seeing is believing. So what is Point du Hoc? Here's an aerial view of it, but you can see the point there. That flat area up top, that's where all the gun emplacements were. You see the narrow little beach in front of those cliffs. That's where everybody came ashore. There were, as I mentioned, gun emplacements up there. The important thing was that these gun emplacements had to be taken out before the rest of the amphibious troops came ashore. Otherwise, they were going to get slaughtered out there. And so this was a huge, huge objective. Those cliffs are 100 feet high. There's another look at it here. Could you imagine being in a landing craft and you see that? That's where we're going, is up top, boys. Let's go. And look at it this way. That beach was pretty narrow. It might run, depending on where the tide was at any given moment, 15 to 20 feet wide is all. And you see the 100-foot high cliffs and the guns up there pointing down at the guys trying to get up them. So how did this all happen? Well, the U.S. Army Rangers made it happen. We had a force of about 235 men, all volunteers, all volunteers. Of the 235, over half were killed in the attempt. About a little over 100, though, actually succeeded. They climbed these cliffs, even with German rifles and guns pointing down at them. They scaled these cliffs. And so it's fair to say that the very liberation of Europe depended on 100 guys and a huge idea. And again, it's important to see this because this is your heritage. And anytime you think that you can't do something, you know, that it's hopeless out there in business or in life or whatever it is, you need to remember these 100 guys, these 235 guys. And most of these guys were also, these are kids that did this, believed in a goal. When people visit Point du Hoc and they look at this, people are astonished. They don't see how it's possible to accomplish, for anybody to accomplish this, particularly when you have, you know, gunfire coming at you. The commander of the ranger the ranger detail, though, says, "We can do this. My guys can do this." And the guys believed him, and they did this.